All right, so yeah, so this is 3 years in virgin Breton oak. So they actually use barrels made from oak trees near the distillery. I don't know if there's a much of a difference in that oak variety versus like an American oak or a European oak or like a limousine oak. But they do use a specific kind of oak tree that grows in that particular part of France. 3 years in that, and then also 3 years matured in ex Oloroso sherry. So that's the double maturation, if you will. Usually, if it's called a double maturation, then it's like at least 3 years in two different types of barrels. So this comes from a distillery that a lad named Leon Warringham founded, and they originally made a plant liqueur, a certain plant liqueur called Elixir d'Armorik, which is a blend of 35 plants, and it is the distillery's flagship product. And it was like an elixir, if you will, and you can still get it at the distillery today. I think they still produce it. But they first produced their first blended whiskey in 1987, and this single malt line was introduced in 1998. So it's relatively new in malt whiskey terms, I suppose. But yeah, it's a product of France. It's not Scotch, but it is single malt. Hey, you need some love too. Yeah. Were you waiting your turn? Mosley was up here the whole time, and you're waiting your turn. Okay. Of course. Of course. All right, so we're going to pour some of this. And if you want, I do have these acrylic paint pens. If you want your name on the bottle, absolutely. And then we'll remember every time we get it out. Hey, you. Can you move just a minute? Just a minute. So I'm not 100% sure what to expect of this because it is a French whiskey, but again, considering it spent 3 years in ex Oloroso sherry, I don't think that will be necessary. All right, no problem. It probably has some amount of like that figs, dates, raisins kind of character. Maybe some of that like darker spices or dark toffee. Now it does have virgin oak in it, which is again similar to where you would what you would age bourbon in. But of course, this is a single malt. It's not a corn whiskey, so it'll be a little bit different in that way. Here's the top. I mean, it's okay. Well, I'm going to use that. Can I use that? Hey, can I use that? Is that allowed? Is that your spot? What do you think? Yeah, no, I didn't think you would like that. I was going to use that turntable, you. She's just here to be in the way, as she is wont to do. What? I know, baby. You want some love. Nobody else is here. The kid's not here for you to get your attention from. Alright, so we'll put that there. Normally I put this on the turntable, but right now we got cat instead. So here we are. This is natural color for roughly 6 years of age. Again, 3 years virgin Breton oak, 3 years ex Oloroso sherry. And I'm not sure if that's a sherry butt or sherry barrel or hogshead, but it's a sherry cask of some kind. So it's pretty light, but again, it's not terribly old. My goodness. You're here for it. right off the rip, that first like aroma, you can definitely tell there's both a mix of like some of that like fruity distillate character and sort of that like sherry elements. Like a little bit of like apple, but it's paired with like some of that like raisin character. There's a little bit of malt present. I haven't tried this one. Yeah, this is a first for me too. I have heard some really good things about their like 15-year-old whiskey, but I haven't heard too much about like their like other offerings. So this is like again a double maturation whiskey. They also have a 10-year, and I think there's one they have that's got peat smoked malt in it too, which. Strangely enough, somehow I recommended to somebody having never tried it and they bought it. But it was weird. I was at the liquor store and a guy was like looking at all the scotch and like I was also there and I had picked up this bottle of, actually it was, I don't know if I can grab it right away, but I picked up this bottle of Lechig, a red wine cask strength. And he was looking at the scotch and he was on his phone and he like asked me, he was like, hey, is that one any good? And I was like, well, you know, it's limited. It's very like strong. So I know this is going to sell out if I don't buy it. Cause it was like they only got one case in. And he was like talking to me about like what he should buy. And I was like, well, do you like peat? And do you like, you know, Speyside, soft stuff? Like, what are you into? He's like, well, I kind of like peated ones. And I was like, well, you know, you could try this one or that one. And he was like, well, I had this Armorik one before. It was pretty good. And I was like, well, this one here is a peated Armorik. And he's like, oh, maybe I'll try that. And I was like, okay. I somehow sommelied this guy into a French whiskey that I've never had before. But the guy seemed happy. Yeah, it's kind of like mostly fruit forward. There's like a little bit of like vanilla and kind of slight spice note that I think is virgin oak related. But it's like very warm. Like if you wanted to go with the idea of like hot apple cider with a slight spice, you wouldn't be completely off track. But there is like an underlying like Oloroso sherry cask related notes like raisin and like a slight dark toffee. Not too nutty though. All right. So here we go. Armorik double maturation. I don't know if you hear that, but a car alarm's going off and it's disturbed our child. She's leaving. Armorik double maturation on the palate. Cheers. It's very malt forward on the palate, which you might expect because I don't think the climate here is much different than in Scotland. I could be wrong, but it is still, again, roughly, if you had an age statement on this, it'd be roughly 6 years old. So it's very high on the malt character on the palate, very malty. You kind of got like that slight apple, like hay, kind of like cereal grains, little bit of like slight like barley sugar kind of thing on the palate. So the sherry notes are not too strong on the palate. It seems like it's mostly in the kind of like mostly distillate, malty, ex-bourbon kind of realm. Despite the fact that it's not ex-bourbon, it's virgin oak. But again, it's kind of like got that sort of like same kind of ex-bourbon sort of vibe. Yeah, again, there's a little bit of sherry on the aroma, but it's mostly like that malt, slight apple note, sweetness, a little bit of spice. On the finish, as soon as you swallow, you get a spike of that like spiciness. There's a little bit of that like kind of like Oloroso sherry related sherry spice. You have a little bit of malts in there. There's an oak component. It's not as like aggressive on the virgin oak notes than I kind of would have expected. You like it? It's not bad. I think the one thing that I find about this one in particular is it's like very heavy on the malt components. So it's probably related to its age. This might get a better, get better with an older age statement. So like, kind of like what I've heard somewhat is like the 15 is really good. So like maybe at 10 and 15 years, you would end up with like more complexity on this bottle. As it is right now, it's kind of like, yeah, there's like some hints of the sherry character, and you do get like some of the sweetness and some of the vanilla that's associated with like maybe virgin oak maturation. But it's kind of like not super complex. And I think it's just because like it has a certain youthfulness to it. It's very malt forward. You get a lot of the like malty character out of it. So that's kind of like the place where like it could use some more like age that would like probably like improve its complexity and improve the experience, at least for me personally. But some people like that. Some people like a young, kind of a youthful malty notes. And I kind of like them like in accompanied with like some other things. That being said, like the high notes of this, again, it's 46% alcohol. There's a good like intensity of flavor on the palate. There's a pretty reasonable finish. The aroma's got a couple of things going on, but it's not as intense as I would like. I think that's like the main thing is like it could use some intensity of aroma, but it doesn't like want for flavor. So like, for example, there's some whiskeys that you get them into the palate and it's like, there's not a whole lot of flavor there. It's lacking. It's a little too smooth, right? So you're not wanting for flavor on this bottle. It's just not like presenting like all of the things that you might want it to for it to be a double maturation. Like you're kind of missing some of that like raisins and dates kind of thing that you might want to expect. That being said, something we always say about when we open brand new bottles like this is whiskey does well to interact with air for a little bit. Kind of like, not in the same way as wine where you want to like aerate it, right? But sometimes the first sip out of the bottle is not like representative of what the bottle like tastes like for the majority of its life, right? So sometimes the flavors within take some like air and some like interaction with like an empty bottle space for it to really like develop. And we try to like expedite that a little bit by like giving it time in the glass. But There's some bottles that I have that like never truly got off their feet till they were halfway empty, for example. So the one thing I'll say about this is it feels really tight and like certain notes are not being expressed. Again, we're missing some sherry here. Maybe we're missing some of that like virgin oak character. And that might like open up as we drink down the bottle a little bit, give it some time to like air out. That's why like I never review a whiskey until it's been open for like at least a month. But overall, it's like pretty good. It's not disappointment. There's just places where I feel like, man, if we got some more of that sherry, man, it would be really good. Or, you know, if there was some higher intensity of his aromas, that would be really good. This is just kind of like good intensity of flavor, just feels a little youthful. Like based off of this, if I was to make a recommendation for this brand, I would say like try the 10, try the 15, try an older age statement. I get the feeling that there might just be not enough time here. It just hasn't had enough time to really be like the best thing the liquid could be. It was good though.